Good morning, my name is Rob. I'm the CEO of Civitas Property Management, and today I wanted to cover what is probably one of your worst fears as a landlord. You have a tenant, they've been living there for a while, the rent got later and later each month, and all of a sudden it just stopped. They didn't say anything, they didn't explain anything, and you really don't know what to do. Common problem, you're not alone, this is not a unique situation, and the good news is that 99% of the time it can be worked out amicably. The first thing I need to caution you on, though, is even though this is your house, legally speaking, you have no right to go over there, tell them to get out, give me my money. You can end up in a world of legal trouble if you try to do that. It is very crucial that you follow the laws, and especially being in California and especially being in the Bay Area, we have some very strict and very structured regulations on the process to have a tenant evicted for non-payment of rent. The first thing that you're going to want to do is continue to try to communicate. In my personal investment properties, I can tell you this has happened countless times where they cage up, they stop returning your calls, if you live close, they stop answering the door, and I would caution you, do not go by the house too much. That can be a breach of the warrant of habitability or the right to quiet enjoyment, so I would not advise going over there in person. Additionally, if you have any kind of temper, if you're prone to say something you're going to regret, it is a great way to get yourself in trouble, so I would advise you to keep as much as possible to the phone, or even better, in writing, because it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So the first thing I would say about that, though, is continue to try to communicate. 99% of the times, something has happened, they didn't get enough hours, or maybe there was a car trouble or a big expense or something, and they want to pay you, they just think that their best option is to just go quiet. My advice would simply be, maybe leave a message, maybe send an email. Hey, Steve, I wanted to touch base. It's the 4th or the 5th. You guys have been great tenants. I understand sometimes things happen. Could you just let me know what's going on? Let me know when I can expect rent. Something to that effect almost always works, and it's really important to keep that relationship, the line of communication, open and keep things from getting too hostile, because once they get hostile, you're in trouble. And like I said, most of the time they end up paying, so if you sour that relationship with your tenant, that's usually permanent. A lot of times it can last for years just because of a word spoken in haste or not knowing their side of the story or something like that. So be very careful. Secondly, one of the main things that people ask me in this situation is, when do I need to call a lawyer? If you're like most of our clients, this is, you don't have a million houses, this is your property, this is your baby, your retirement, and you've heard horror stories, and some of them are true. But at the same time, you also don't want to spend $1,000 on a lawyer just to tell you what you think you can do on your own. My personal recommendation is that it is never too soon to get a lawyer involved once they stop communicating and once it becomes time to serve a 3-day notice. If you've done this before, if you have served a 3-day notice and you are confident that your 3-day notice will hold up under the scrutiny if it does go to court, then I would say wait to hire a lawyer until the 3 days have passed. However, I will caution you, there are a million little details and minutiae in the law that if you don't get them covered, your 3-day notice can be thrown out, and sometimes you won't find out until a month or two later when you're in court and you have to start the whole thing over. So as an example, I'll give you an example from something I did. One of the only times we dealt with a Section 8 tenant and we dealt with a 3-day notice to them, or excuse me, a 60-day notice, a notice to vacate. We gave them the notice, 90-day notice to vacate. With Section 8, it's 90 days. We sent in the notice. It was clear as could be. There was no issue of intent, but I made the mistake that I put, in 90 days, you must vacate this property, but I did not put, in 90 days, August 21st, you must vacate the property. And thankfully, it only was a couple of days before it was rejected, and I was able to find out you got to reissue it, but we still lost a couple of days. So I would say be very careful. Maybe you're downloading a 3-day notice. I love Google as much as the next guy, but Google is not a qualified lawyer. Google does not know real estate law. So I would be very careful. If you haven't done it before, I would tap in a lawyer for the 3-day notice. If you have gotten a 3-day notice that will stand up in court, wait until that has passed. 99% of the time, you issue that 3-day notice and they will miraculously find the money. It will make a religious person out of you because it's a miracle. They swear they don't have it, and you issue the 3-day notice, and somehow or another they come up with it. Make sure you don't accept any partial payment either, because if you accept so much as $5 during that 3-day notice, it is void, and again, you have to start over. So be very careful, and that's where I say it can be wise to have a lawyer involved. What I'm giving you, this is not legal advice. This is just my personal experience. One of my favorite sayings is that good judgment comes from experience, and experience usually comes from bad judgment, and I've got plenty of that to learn from. So this is just me giving you advice as a property manager, not as an attorney. When the 3-day notice is out, make sure that you still keep things open and friendly. Make sure they know that this is not an ultimatum. You want to keep them. I believe in the praise sandwich. Hey, Phil, you've been a great tenant. We've got a little problem. I got to cover my mortgage. I need this payment. It is late. A late fee is going to be applied. I know that sometimes things happen. We definitely want to keep you here, but please, get back to me. We've got to get this taken care of. Something in that model, because your tenants are probably going to be there for a while. It's important to keep that relationship positive. In the event the 3-day notice passes, at that point you need to file an unlawful detainer, which is the fancy legal term for an eviction. And at that point you absolutely need to get a lawyer involved. If you have questions, feel free to call our office. We're happy to recommend attorneys. We're happy to offer advice, things like that, or answer any questions you might have.